I went just after midnight, when the road above it was quiet and the last of the traffic from the falls had thinned into silence. The entrance sat low in the embankment, a narrow limestone arc cut through the earth, damp and darker than the night around it. Even from a distance, I could feel the temperature shift near it, a cool breeze spilling outward from the tunnel's throat, carrying the smell of wet stone and something faintly metallic beneath it. The trees along the road leaned inward slightly, their branches forming a loose canopy that blocked most of the moonlight. Locals call it the Screaming Tunnel. Official maps list it plainly as a drainage passage near Screaming Tunnel, but built in the early 1900s to redirect runoff beneath the railway line. But the maps don't mention the story. They don't mention the girl who supposedly ran into the tunnel with her dress on fire. They don't mention the screams. I stood at the entrance longer than I meant to. The inside was completely black, not shadowed, not dim. Black in a way that swallowed detail even before you stepped across the threshold. Graffiti crawled along the outer stone, layers of paint over decades of names and symbols, but the deeper walls were hidden. The air that drifted out was colder than the night should have allowed. I stepped inside. The shift in sound was immediate. The soft rustle of trees and distant hum of the road vanished, replaced by a hollow stillness that pressed against my ears. My footsteps echoed sharply against the curved ceiling, each one returning to me half a second later, distorted slightly as though someone else were matching my pace a fraction behind. The tunnel was longer than it appeared from outside, a straight passage with a faint, pale circle marking the far exit. Water trickled somewhere along the edges, and thin rivulets reflected faint glimmers from the lighter in my hand. I hadn't planned to use it yet. The legend says if you light a flame in the center of the tunnel, it will be blown out by something unseen, and sometimes, if you listen carefully, you'll hear her scream. I told myself I was there for atmosphere, for history, for curiosity. But as I walked deeper, the temperature dropped another few degrees. The dampness thickened in the air, clinging to my lungs. The echo of my steps began to behave strangely, returning not even rhythm, but staggered, as if something in the darkness adjusted its stride. I stopped walking. The echo did not stop immediately. One last footstep answered mine, from ahead, not behind. Ahead. The far exit was still visible, a pale oval at the end of the tunnel, but the darkness between us felt heavier now, denser, like it had substance. A faint draft brushed past my face, not from the entrance, from deeper within. I moved toward the center of the tunnel, where the ceiling arced highest, and for the first time since stepping inside, I had the distinct sensation that the tunnel was not empty. It was listening. I told myself the echo had simply rebounded at an odd angle. Old stone does that. Curved ceilings distort sound, water shifts acoustics. There were a dozen practical explanations for why that final step had seemed to come from ahead of me instead of behind. Still, I didn't move for several seconds. The tunnel held its silence carefully, like a breath drawn and not yet released. The faint oval of the far exit remained steady in the distance, a dull gray shape framed by darker stone. The walls were slick with moisture, streaked with mineral stains that caught what little ambient light reached this deep. I walked again, slower this time. My steps echoed forward and back in a hollow chorus, each one overlapping slightly with the last. The trickle of water along the base of the wall grew louder the farther I went, and I could see where runoff had carved shallow channels through the dirt floor. The center of the tunnel was only a few paces ahead. That was where the legend said to stand. I reached it and stopped. The air was noticeably colder here, not dramatically so, but enough that the skin on my arms prickled beneath my jacket. The draft that had brushed past me earlier returned, this time more defined, a thin ribbon of moving air that slid across my face and disappeared toward the entrance behind me. Except the entrance was behind me. This draft had moved toward it from the far end. I turned my head slowly toward the distant exit. It was still there, unchanged, quiet. The tunnel was straight. There were no side passages, no hidden alcoves. Nothing should have been able to move air from that direction unless something had displaced it. I shifted my weight. The echo answered, but a fraction of a second too late. Not immediate reflection. Delayed, as though it had traveled farther than the visible length of the passage before returning. My throat felt dry. I pulled the lighter from my pocket and rolled it in my palm, listening to the faint click of the wheel against the striker without actually sparking it. The story says the flame won't hold. The story says it will be blown out by unseen breath. The story says that sometimes, if you're unlucky, you'll hear something else first. I crouched slightly and ran my fingers along the stone wall. It was colder here than near the entrance, almost unnaturally so. The moisture beading on its surface felt closer to condensation than simple runoff, as though the air temperature shifted abruptly at this midpoint. Another faint draft brushed past me, stronger this time. It did not feel like wind. It felt directional, measured, and then, somewhere behind me, closer to the entrance than I remembered leaving it, I heard a soft scrape, not a footstep, not water, something dragging lightly against stone. I did not return immediately. I listened. The scrap came again, closer, and though the tunnel stretched in a straight line from one end to the other, I could no longer shake the growing certainty that something had entered after me. I turned slowly. The entrance was still visible, a darker rectangle within the night beyond, framed by overhanging branches and a slice of sky. Nothing stood there, no silhouettes, no movement. The tunnel was empty, and yet the scrape had been close enough that I could almost place its position along the wall. I listened harder. The trickle of water continued its thin, steady path along the edge of the floor. Somewhere overhead, a faint drip fell from the curved ceiling and struck stone with a hollow tick. My own breathing sounded too loud, rebounding off limestone and returning to me altered, thinner. I took a cautious step toward the entrance. The echo returned, normal. I took another, normal again. Then the scrape came once more, but this time it wasn't behind me. It was beside me, directly to my left. I froze. The wall there was solid limestone, stained dark by decades of moisture and layered graffiti. There were no openings, no recesses deep enough to conceal anything larger than a fist. Yet the sound had pressed right against the stone, a slow drag, like fabric brushing rock, or fingers trailing across it. My pulse climbed steadily. The draft returned, colder now, sliding along my cheek and down the collar of my jacket. It did not gust. It did not swirl. It moved in a narrow line, precise and steady from the far end to the tunnel toward the entrance. As if something had exhaled, I shifted my stance and turned toward the far exit again. It looked farther away than it had a minute ago. Not by much, just enough to unsettle me. The pale oval of light seemed slightly dimmer, slightly smaller, as though the darkness between us had thickened. The scrape sounded again, this time from the far end, and closer than it should have been. The sound was clearer now, not stone shifting, not debris. It carried a faint texture of it, like fabric dragged along a damp surface, slow, unhurried. I swallowed and felt the air catch in my throat. I hadn't lit the lighter yet. The legend said to light it in the center. I was still near the center. If anything was going to happen, it would happen now. I stepped back to the exact midpoint beneath the highest curve of the ceiling and raised the lighter in my hand. The metal felt colder than before, as though it had absorbed the tunnel's chill. The scrape stopped completely. The silence that followed was heavier than anything that had come before it. Even the water seemed to soften, its sound fading into the background. I rolled the wheel halfway, stopped, listened, nothing. I sparked it. The flame flared to life with a soft hiss, casting a trembling orange glow against the walls. The graffiti jumped into sharp relief. Names layered over names, dates carved and painted, symbols scratched deep into limestone. For one steady second, the flame held. The tunnel remained still. Then the draft came again, stronger, directly in front of me, and the flame bent sharply toward my face. The flame didn't go immediately. It stretched, thin and horizontal, pulled toward me by a steady, focused stream of air that came from directly ahead, not from the entrance behind me, not from some cross-current, from the far end of the tunnel, from the direction of the pale exit. I held the lighter steady, the draft increased, the flame flickered violently, then snapped out with a sharp hiss. Darkness dropped over me like a curtain. For a moment I stood frozen, staring into blackness so complete it felt solid. My vision strained for the faint oval of the far exit, but it vanished entirely. The tunnel was no longer a straight corridor between two openings. It was a sealed, trod stone. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The air in front of me felt disturbed, as if something had just leaned in, close and withdrawn. My thumb trembled against the lighter's wheel. Before I could spark it again, I heard it, not loud, not piercing. A sound so thin and distant at first I mistook it for wind slipping through a crack in the stone. But there was no wind. The sound wavered, rose slightly, fell again. It wasn't a full scream, not yet. It was the beginning of one, a breath drawn too sharply, a voice caught between silence and release. It came from ahead of me, from the far end where the exit should have been. My throat tightened. I forced myself to flick the lighter again. The spark caught. The flame flared. The tunnel snapped back into view. Walls closed on either side, graffiti clearing in orange light, damp streaks glistening along the stone, and the far exit was there again, small, distant, but visible. The sound stopped instantly, as if it had never existed. I swallowed hard and took a step forward, raising the lighter higher. The flame trembled in my hand, casting long shadows that stretched and distorted along the curved ceiling. Another step. The draft brushed my face again, colder, heavier. The flame bent sharply once more. This time it didn't go out. It guttered low, clinging stubbornly to life. The light shrank into a tight, quivering bead at the wick. And from somewhere just beyond the reach of that glow, not at the exit, not at the entrance, but from the stone itself, I heard the scream fully. It tore through the tunnel in a single, rising surge of sound, not echoing, not bouncing from wall to wall. It moved straight through me, high-pitched, raw, human, and impossibly close. The scream did not echo. That was the first thing I understood. In a tunnel built entirely for sound to rebound and multiply, the scream traveled in a single, clean line, straight through the air, straight through my chest, and vanished without reflection. The flame in my lighter went out the instant it ended. Total darkness swallowed me again. My ears rang from the force of it. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stood frozen, lighter clenched in my fist, afraid to move, afraid to relight it, afraid of what the flame might reveal if I did. The silence afterward was worse. Not empty silence, listening silence, the kind that waits. I forced myself to breathe slowly and flickered the lighter once more. The spark caught weakly, then steadied. The orange glow pushed back and the darkness just enough to reveal the curved walls around me. The graffiti seemed sharper now, as though the colors had deepened. The damp streaks along the limestone glistened like fresh trails. The far exit was still visible, but something was wrong with it. It looked narrower, as if the tunnel had lengthened or the opening had shifted farther away. I took a careful step forward. The flame held. Another step. The draft brushed my face again, but this time it was warmer, not by much, just enough to register. I stopped. The air in front of me felt charged, like the pressure before a storm breaks. The lighter trembled in my grip and the flame cast a thin halo of light that barely reached more than a few feet ahead. And then I saw it, not clearly, not fully. A darker shape within the darkness ahead. At first I thought it was a trick of shadow, a distortion where the flame's glow met the black beyond it. But the shape did not shift with the light. It remained fixed, vertical, just beyond the reach of illumination. Roughly human in height, too thin, too still. The draft flowed around me again, stronger now, pressing against the flame until it bent nearly flat. The lighter's metal burned hot against my thumb, but I didn't release it. The shape did not move. It did not step forward. It did not retreat. It simply stood in the center of the tunnel between me and the exit. And as I stared at it, staring to force detail from shadow, I realized something that made my stomach drop. The scream had not come from far down the passage. It had come from the exact distance, from where that shape now stood. The flame flickered violently, the draft surged once more, and the shape leaned slightly toward me. It did not step, it did not glide, it leaned, just a slight shift forward, subtle enough that I might have imagined it, except the flame reached instantly, flattening toward me as though pushed by breath from directly in front of my face. I staggered back on instinct. The shape did not advance to the close distance. It remained exactly where it had been, suspended in that narrow band between visible and unseen, but the pressure in the air changed. The space between us felt compressed, like the tunnel itself had shortened. The lighter trembled violently in my hand. I raised it higher, forcing the light outward, straining to carve detail from shadow. The figure resolved slightly, not fully, just enough. It was not solid. The darkness that formed it was thinner than the surrounding black, like smoke gathered into the suggestion of a body. I could make out the outline of shoulders, the faint slope of a head tilted slightly to one side. The posture was wrong, not upright in defiance, not collapsed in weakness, angled, as though the neck could not hold it straight. My breath caught. The draft shifted again, no longer flowing toward the entrance but circling between us, tight and contained, like air trapped in a sealed chamber. I took another step back. The tunnel answered with an echo, but not mine. A second footstep followed, soft and delayed, from ahead. The flame snapped sideways and the scream came again, closer. This time it did echo, but not off the walls. It echoed from inside my own chest. The sound burst outward from the shape in front of me, but I felt it resonate internally, vibrating through my ribs, through my teeth. It was not just heard, it was experienced. The flame went out, the darkness surged. I stumbled backward blindly, hand reaching for the wall, fingers scraping wet limestone. The scream did not stop abruptly. It stretched, thinning, rising higher than seemed possible, until it became less of a human cry and more of a tearing sound, like fabric being ripped endlessly in the dark. Then it ceased. The tunnel fell silent once more, but something had changed. I could feel it. The air no longer felt empty between me and the far exit. It felt occupied, and I no longer believed the shape was standing at a distance. I believed it was standing directly in front of me, close enough that if I reached out into the dark, my hand would touch it. I did not reach out. Every instinct locked my arms at my sides, fingers close tight around the useless lighter. The darkness in front of me felt dense, occupied, as though the space itself had weight. I could sense where it began, a boundary in the air, colder than the rest of the tunnel, pressing faintly against my face. I forced my thumb against the wheel again. The spark caught weakly. The flame flared, small, unsteady but enough. The tunnel snapped back into view, and the space in front of me was empty. No shape, no distortion, just damp stone and the long, straight passage stretching toward the far exit. But the exit was wrong. It was no longer a pale oval. It was dark, completely dark, as if something stood within it, blocking whatever light should have been beyond. The flame trembled violently in my hand. I took a slow step backward. The echo returned, mine alone this time, but it sounded closer than before, as if the tunnel had shortened behind me. Another step. The entrance should have been only a few yards away, but when I glanced over my shoulder, I saw nothing but darkness. The entrance was gone. Both ends were gone. The tunnel was sealed in blackness on either side. The flame dipped low, struggling. The air grew heavier, pressing against my chest. Then I heard it again. Not the scream this time, but breathing, shallow, uneven, directly in front of me. I held the lighter higher, though the flame barely illuminated more than a narrow cone. The breathing did not echo. It was too close for that. A faint shape began to gather in the glow, not forming from shadow this time, but from something like mist, condensing slowly in the air. The outline sharpened just enough for me to see the suggestion of a figure, the shoulders, arms hanging at unnatural angles, head tilted sharply to one side, and where the face should have been, there was nothing but darkness deeper than the rest. The breathing hitched, and then the head tilted farther than any neck should allow. The flame went out again, but this time the darkness did not feel empty. It felt inches away. The breathing stopped, not gradually, not fading. It cut off mid-inhale. The silence that followed was absolute, so complete it felt engineered, as though the tunnel had sealed itself against every external sound. I did not relight the flame. I was no longer certain I wanted to see what stood in front of me. The darkness pressed close, intimate, almost touching. The air felt cooler at my face than anywhere else, like something standing directly before me was displacing it. I tried to step backward. My heel struck stone immediately, the wall, but that was impossible. I had been near the center. The wall should have been several feet behind me. My hand reached back, fingers played. Cold limestone met my palm, rough, solid, unyielding. The tunnel had shortened, or I had been moved. The air shifted again, not a draft this time, but a faint warmth spreading outward from directly in front of me. It brushed my cheeks, my lips. Breathe, soft, shallow. Close enough that I felt moisture against my skin. And then something grazed the lighter in my hand, not enough to grab it, just enough to brush my knuckles. The contact was fleeting but unmistakable. Skin, cold. I flinched violently and sparked the lighter without thinking. The flame burst to life between us, and for the first time, I saw her clearly, not fully solid, not entirely mist. She stood so close the flame illuminated her from below, a thin figure in what might once have been a dress, the fabric clinging unnaturally to her form. The material looked fused in places, melted into itself. Her arms hung at wrong angles as though they had been twisted and never reset. Her head remained tilted too far, and her face, it was not burned, it was not skeletal. It was smooth and pale and black, as though all figures had been erased, except the mouth. The mouth was open, impossibly wide, not screaming, waiting. The flame trembled violently, stretched toward her. Her chest did not rise, she did not blink, she did not move. But the air between us vibrated faintly as if something were building again behind that open mouth. The lighter grew painfully hot against my thumb. I could not look away, and slowly her head began to straighten. Her head straightened with a low, deliberate motion, vertebra by vertebra, until it aligned upright. The movement made no sound, no crack of bone, no rustle of fabric, just a steady correction, as though gravity had finally remembered her. The flame quivered violently between us. I could see more of her now, the suggestion of singed edges along the hem of her dress, darkened streaks around, running upward as if smoke had climbed her body and never left. The fabric did not sway. There was no breeze strong enough to disturb it, but the air trembled. Her mouth remained open, wider than it should have been, not stretched in pain, not contorted, simply open beyond proportion. The inside was darker than the tunnel itself, and then I understood something that rooted me to the spot. The scream wasn't coming from her throat, it was coming from inside her. Deep within that impossible darkness, the vibration began again, low at first, a faint pressure against my ribs. The lighter flame thinned to a fragile thread, bending toward her as though drawn by gravity. The sound started not as a cry, but as a hum, thin, high, unstable. It climbed steadily in pitch, rising through the narrow chamber of the tunnel until it felt like it was threading into my ears and burrowing inward. The walls began to respond. Graffiti trembled in the flickering light. Droplets of water along the ceiling shook low, loose, and fell in uneven patterns around us. The hum sharpened. My vision blurred at the edges. The lighter's metal burned into my thumb, but I couldn't release it. If the flame died, I knew she would be closer. The sound creaked suddenly, and the scream erupted again. This time it was not distant. It was not projected down the length of the tunnel. It exploded outward in all directions, slamming into the walls, ricocheting violently, multiplying until it felt as though dozens of voices screamed in layered unison. My knees buckled, the flame went out, but the scream did not stop. In the darkness, I felt movement, not from one direction, from every direction, as if she had fractured into many. The sound circled me, overlapped, folded in on itself until I could no longer tell where she stood. Then, abruptly, the scream snapped off. The tunnel went dead silent, and in that silence, I felt fingers wrap gently around my twist. The fingers were cold, ice cold. They wrapped around my wrist with a light pressure, not enough to pull, not enough to grip tightly, but enough to make my skin crawl. My pulse raised. Every instinct screamed to pull away, but my arm felt rooted in place, heavy, like the tunnel itself held me steady. I forced myself to look. The lighter was dead in my other hand, and I couldn't relight it fast enough to illuminate her. Darkness pressed in on all sides, thick and impenetrable, and yet I could feel her presence clearly. A weight in front of me, a pressure in the air, a cold touch on my skin. Then I heard it again. The hum, faint at first, almost imperceptible, threading through the stone walls. It rose steadily, vibrating beneath my feet, inside my ribs, coiling through my ears, and from the hum, the scream emerged. Low at first, a sound caught between agony and warning. It didn't travel, it radiated, it consumed. I stumbled backward, dragging the hand she held with me. My other hand clawed at the wall, seeking purchase. The tunnel felt endless now, stretching farther than I remembered. The far exit, the pale oval of safety, seemed distant, impossibly small. The fingers on my wrist didn't loosen. They moved slightly, guiding me forward, not toward her, not toward the exit. Forward, through the center of the tunnel, through the space she dominated. The hum grew louder, deeper, vibrating in perfect rhythm with my racing heartbeat. I couldn't think, I couldn't speak. My lungs burned with each shallow, panicked breath, and then the scream changed. It became articulate, almost human in shape, echoing the horror I couldn't process. A faint whisper threaded through it. Leave. The words were soft, chillingly calm, but they cut through the chaos. The hand on my wrist squeezed slightly, and I realized she wasn't attacking. She was warning. The lighter's click finally reached my fingers. I flicked it, and the tiny flame sputtered to life. The tunnel illuminated for only a second, and in that second I saw her fully. Her thin, smoke-tinged body, her blank, impossibly open mouth, her dark, hollow eyes that somehow stared into me from every angle. Then the light died. The scream erupted once more, deafening, echoing endlessly, as if the tunnel itself had become her voice. I ran. I ran blindly, my hand still tingling where hers had touched my wrist. The darkness pressed close, almost tangible, the tunnel seeming to stretch farther with every step. My feet slipped on wet stone and mud, my breaths ripping through my chest, echoing. The scream followed me, not like sound bouncing, but like a living thing pursuing me. It threaded around my body, brushing my ears, vibrating my chest, rising in pitch until it tore at my sanity. Each step I took felt measured, controlled by something unseen, like the tunnel itself had a pulse, a rhythm I could not match. I glimpsed the faint oval of the exit ahead. Relief surged, until the shape of darkness shifted within it. The outline of her figure, or what she had become, blocked the way. Not solid, not fully there, but enough that instinct told me I could not pass. My feet skidded on wet stone. I stumbled. The scream rose again, now layered with whispers I could almost comprehend, words of warning, pleading, grief. Desperation overtook me. I vaulted forward blindly, colliding with stone walls, scraping hands against limestone. The draft hit me again, cold, deliberate, pushing and pulling as if guiding me, testing me. I fought to keep my balance, lungs burning, ears ringing, heart hammering like it would burst. Then, nothing. The tunnel felt utterly silent. The shadows retreated just enough for me to see the exit clearly. The air still carried a faint chill, but it no longer pressed. I stumbled out into the night, collapsing on the dirt path outside the embankment. My hands shook violently, lighter clutched in one fist, and for the first time I dared to breathe fully. Behind me, the tunnel swallowed its darkness again, quiet, still, waiting. I did not look back. I did not listen. I ran until the sounds of the forest, of the distant road, absorbed me entirely. But even hours later, in the safety of my car, I could feel it. The chill on my wrist, faint as a shadow, a reminder that the tunnel was never empty. And the scream, it never truly ends.